Hello my friends, my name is Christopher. This is a salvaged door from the Habitat for Humanity Restore. And this is a salvaged window that I got from a Facebook Marketplace sale that has exterior grade stained glass. Isn't it cool? And in this episode I'm talking about installing doors and windows.
Stained glass for the win!
So before we get started, this is part 8 of a 9-part series, deep dives of specific topics for this great big shed build project that I've got going on behind me here. I have a feature-length video if you want to see the entire thing from start to finish and see some different angles and footage. And of course a fun 4-minute time lapse if you want to see this all go by super fast. So I started with windows on this shed, and even before I started installing them, I had to do so much research, and I'm still not convinced that I did the right thing, but it all depends on, I guess, what you're trying to do. Does that make sense? Let me try to elaborate. You're seeing in the footage what I ended up doing. I framed this on the inside long ago, and this is just a window. You know, if I were to buy this new, this is like a window from the 1930s, or buy this new 80 years ago, it would come with a panel. This is like a top window. There'd be a bottom window, and there'd be a frame, and you put the frame into your opening, and then you nail the frame into the outer frame. Well, that's not the situation I had here. So I was torn with, should I make some cuts here, or adjust my actual framed wall, and make a frame around this that I then nail into the outside, or is that overkill? I chose just to make sure that these cuts were about, perfect, leaving maybe 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch of a gap around the entire window. And on the back end, I've got it secured with L brackets. And that, I think, is going to be perfectly fine for my situation. I got a lot of inspiration from Pinterest when it comes to these antique windows. It's kind of a pipe dream of mine. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I love seeing those greenhouses that are made with recycled windows, stained glass or otherwise, and so often it's just a 2x4 frame, and then things like this that people will get from restores or the side of the road are just nailed to it, and it works really well for their purpose. So I did a, I think, modified version of that, and it turned out really nicely. The door was a little bit more troubling for me though. This is an old exterior door. They're very common in our area. We had Morgan doors and Payne doors and a lot of these beautiful doors if you live in a character home that's 100-some years old like ours. Actually, ours is 80-some years old, but anyways, same drift. These are common here. This is similar in design to the door that I have on my house, which is why I chose to go with a wood door with paneled windows on it. You might be saying, hey, schmuck, why are you putting a door with windows on there? It's not as thermally efficient and insulated and all that jazz. I know. I also want light in here, and since I wasn't putting windows on the outside, the windows in this panel worked really well for me. And again, it's the same style door here, so as we're talking about the holistic architectural approach to how I designed and built the shed, it ties into the same architectural features that I have in my house. Doors made out of wood are also nice because instead of tweaking the frame here to fit the door, I tweaked the door to fit the frame. What I mean by that is I did a fair amount of sanding here on the bottom of both sides because I ended up having, not my king studs, but the next ones in on the door, they kind of bowed at the bottom by like 1/4 inch at the bottom on each side, which is really significant. And when I was doing it in the process of it, I didn't think anything of it because at that time I thought, oh, I'll build like a barn door here and put it on the outside and it won't matter. But over time I chose to go with this door and I had to make some corrections. That's okay. This door only cost me $35 since it was secondhand from the Habitat Restore. And I restored it by stripping it completely and then restaining it and putting finish on the outside. And isn't that interesting? Because this door really tells a story when you strip it down. I've got a couple different kinds of wood, definitively oak on the outside. I don't know if this is a pine or what on some of these cross pieces, but then you see these watermarks here, which really came to the surface. Who knows if this is like a door on a bar or what? I don't know. Anyways, watermarks came to the surface. So I substituted one feature for another. There were a lot of scratches on the door before and paint marks, and now I've got some watermarks and blotchiness. But it's still cool. I don't mind these dots here because they tie into the knots in the cedar. And again, it tells the story of the door. That has nothing to do with installation, of course. I'm just giving you a story. The installation is straightforward. I bought a door handle and I followed the instructions. I took my chisel and I chiseled out the notch where the lock has to go. I also, well, you can't see this, I chiseled out the insides here of the hinges, and I was going to chisel them out here too, but at the very end I thought I would put the hinges on the outside because aesthetically I think it looks nice to balance some shiny silver over there with the shiny silver over here. Again, design choice, and it worked really well for the framing that I had going on. So as you're putting up the door yourself, you know, just work with it, right? That's what Tim Gunn says. Work with it. Now it's a creative element, not a struggle to overcome. It's a design element. Aha. Honestly, the hardest part about the door was chiseling in the hinges and then lifting it to making sure it was in there properly. I used some extra shingles to create an 1/8 of an inch gap on the bottom so it's not rubbing anywhere. That worked really nicely. And then I had to take Goo Gone and clean the windows nicely because there were several different stickers. The door was really satisfying once it finally came on. And after it was on, I was mostly complete. In fact, all I really had to do was build a ramp up to this step, and then I trimmed it with some cedar around the edge, and I just did a couple other little final finishing touches, which is a perfect segue to the last video. Part 9 is going to be finishing touches and closing thoughts. So, if I had to do things again, what would I do? Well, number one, I would make sure that my joists don't bow at the bottom because that caused way more trouble than it needed to, and it kind of sucked. Worked out in the end, but again, a lot of hassle. Item number 2, if I had to go with these windows, maybe I would have framed them in a box and then nailed that box into the frame of the walls. Would have been a little bit easier than what I did. Would it have been better for insulation? Maybe. We'll see. Time will tell. I have read both things, and I'm sure you're going to give me your opinions on it in the comments down below. So please do that. If you think I did something right or wrong, let me know. The most helpful comment I'll pin to the top. Please be respectful. Thank you very much. If you're new, I hope you subscribe. I put out some pretty decent comment. At least it's moderately humorous, and it's on gardening and home improvement. So thanks a lot for watching. Check out part 9 with my closing thoughts and the other videos that I've talked about. I'll see you in the next one.